Have you ever felt like your mind is a storm that never stops raging, even when everything around you is perfectly still? While others seem to glide through life on autopilot, your thoughts dig deeper, question everything, and refuse to let you rest. You think in layers that most people never reach. You see connections that others miss. And somehow, this gift of depth feels more like a curse, because no one understands the weight of a mind that never shuts off. But here's what you need to know. Your quiet mind is not quiet at all. It is loud with brilliance, heavy with awareness, and rich with complexity that the average person will never experience. Today, you are going to discover the psychological secrets of people whose minds work differently. The overthinkers, the self-talkers, the ones trapped in endless thought loops, the ones who choose solitude not because they hate people, but because silence is where their minds finally make sense. If you have ever felt alone in your own head, this is for you. Everything is about to make sense. Let us start by talking about something that society constantly misunderstands. People who think too deeply often feel like they are living in a different reality than everyone else. And psychology confirms that they actually are. Their brains are wired to process information differently, to dig beneath the surface of everything, to question what others accept without thought. This is not a choice they make. This is how their neural pathways have developed, creating minds that cannot help but go deeper. People who think too deeply often find themselves exhausted by their own thoughts, while others can watch a movie and simply enjoy it. Deep thinkers are analyzing the symbolism, questioning the character motivations, considering the cultural implications, and connecting it to 15 other concepts their minds have stored away. While others can have a casual conversation and move on, deep thinkers are still processing that conversation hours later, examining the subtext, wondering about the unsaid things, analyzing the dynamics beneath the words. This depth of processing creates a particular kind of loneliness. Deep thinkers struggle to find people who can meet them at their level of analysis. Most conversations feel painfully surface level to them. People talk about weather, gossip, trivial complaints, and the deep thinker is screaming inside because they want to discuss ideas, meanings, the fundamental nature of existence. But they have learned that most people are not interested in going there, so they stay quiet, nodding along to conversations that bore them, feeling increasingly isolated in a world that seems content with shallow. What psychology reveals about people who think too deeply is that they often experience what researchers call cognitive overload. Their minds are constantly active, constantly making connections, constantly processing multiple layers of information simultaneously. This creates mental exhaustion that others cannot understand. People wonder why they are always tired when they have not done anything physically demanding. But thinking deeply is demanding. It burns cognitive energy at a rate that surface-level thinking never approaches. Deep thinkers also struggle with decision-making in ways that puzzle people around them. What seems like a simple choice to others becomes an intricate analysis of possibilities, consequences, implications, and meanings for the deep thinker. Should they take this job? Well, first they need to consider how it aligns with their values, how it will impact their mental health, what it says about their life trajectory, whether they are choosing it for authentic reasons or societal pressure, what opportunities it might close off, and about 50 other factors. By the time they finish analyzing, the opportunity has often passed. This analytical nature also means they see problems that others miss. They notice the flaw in the plan that everyone else overlooked. They recognize the potential negative outcome that everyone else is ignoring. They understand the complexity of situations that others have oversimplified. This makes them valuable in strategic roles, but it also makes them the person who always seems negative or pessimistic. They are not trying to be difficult. They genuinely see the risks and complications that their depth of thinking reveals. People who think too deeply often develop anxiety as a side effect of their cognitive style. When you can see all the ways things might go wrong, when you understand all the complexities and variables, when you recognize how little control you actually have over outcomes, anxiety becomes almost inevitable. Their minds are constantly running simulations of possible futures, analyzing potential threats, preparing for scenarios that may never happen. This is their brain trying to protect them through preparation. But it feels like torture. What many do not realize is that deep thinkers often feel guilty about their inability to just relax and enjoy life the way others seem to. They watch people laugh easily, make quick decisions, live spontaneously, and they wonder what is wrong with them that they cannot do the same. But nothing is wrong. They simply have minds that are built for depth, and depth comes with weight. You cannot think deeply and stay light. The two are incompatible. The gift of thinking deeply is that these individuals understand nuance in ways that make them exceptional artists, writers, philosophers, therapists, and strategists. They see what others miss. They understand what others overlook. They create meaning where others see randomness. But the curse is that they can never turn it off. They can never stop analyzing, never stop questioning, never stop going deeper. Their minds are both their greatest asset and their heaviest burden. Now let us talk about another group that shares a similar struggle. If your mind never stops, it means you are dealing with what psychologists call persistent cognitive activation. Your brain is essentially stuck in a state of constant processing, never fully resting, never truly quiet. Even when you try to sleep, thoughts keep coming. Even when you try to relax, your mind is already 3 steps ahead, planning, worrying, analyzing, creating. People whose minds never stop often describe it as having a radio that cannot be turned off. There is always noise in their heads, always a stream of thoughts, ideas, worries, memories, plans, questions. While others can zone out and think of nothing, these individuals cannot access that blessed emptiness. Their minds are constantly generating content, and that content demands attention even when they desperately need rest. Psychology shows that a mind that never stops is often the result of several factors working together. High intelligence plays a role because a more complex brain simply generates more thoughts. Anxiety contributes because an anxious mind is always scanning for threats and problems. Trauma can wire the brain for hypervigilance, where it never feels safe enough to truly rest. Creativity adds fuel because a creative mind is constantly making new connections and generating new ideas. Put all these factors together, and you get a mind that runs at full speed, even when the body is exhausted. What makes this particularly challenging is that our culture glorifies busy minds. We praise productivity, constant thinking, always being on. But we do not talk about the cost. People whose minds never stop are mentally exhausted in a way that sleep does not fix. They wake up tired because even their dreams are intense and complex. They go through their days feeling like they are carrying the weight of thousands of thoughts that never get resolved, never get completed, just keep accumulating. These individuals often develop coping mechanisms that others find strange. They might need background noise constantly because silence makes the internal noise feel louder. They might struggle with meditation because sitting quietly with their thoughts feels like torture rather than peace. They might become workaholics because staying busy at least gives their racing mind something productive to focus on. They might use substances to slow their thoughts down, seeking relief from the relentless mental activity. If your mind never stops, it also means you probably struggle with being present. While your body is in one place, your mind is everywhere else. You are thinking about the conversation you had yesterday, the task you need to do tomorrow, the problem you cannot solve, the idea you want to develop, and 20 other things simultaneously. This makes it hard to truly connect with others because you are never fully there. People can sense your mental absence even when you are physically present. The exhaustion of a mind that never stops goes beyond mental fatigue. It manifests physically. Tension headaches from constant cognitive activity. Jaw clenching from mental stress. Insomnia because your brain will not shut off long enough to let you sleep. Digestive issues because your nervous system never fully relaxes. Your body is paying the price for your mind's inability to rest, and that creates a cycle where physical discomfort generates more thoughts, which creates more physical discomfort. What people whose minds never stop need to understand is that this is not a flaw in their character. This is how their brain is wired, often due to a combination of genetics, environment, and experience. They are not weak for being unable to just relax. They are not broken for being unable to quiet their thoughts. They are dealing with a neurological reality that requires compassion and specific strategies, rather than judgment and willpower. The challenge is finding ways to manage a mind that never stops without trying to force it to be something it is not. This might mean accepting that you will never be someone who can just sit and do nothing. It might mean finding activities that channel your mental energy productively. It might mean learning to observe your thoughts without getting caught up in them. It might mean medication or therapy to address underlying anxiety or trauma. But it always means letting go of the fantasy that one day you will just be calm and quiet inside. Now we need to talk about a group that gets mocked constantly, but is actually demonstrating something psychologically significant. People who talk to themselves usually have higher cognitive function and better self-regulation than those who do not. Yes, you read that correctly. Talking to yourself is not a sign of losing your mind. It is often a sign of having a highly active and well-organized mind. Psychology has extensively studied self-talk, and the findings are fascinating. When you talk to yourself out loud, you are engaging multiple cognitive processes simultaneously. You are activating language centers, auditory processing, working memory, and executive function all at once. This creates a more robust form of thinking than silent internal dialogue. It helps you organize your thoughts, clarify your reasoning, and catch errors in your logic that you might miss if you only thought silently. People who talk to themselves usually are processing complex information or working through difficult problems. They have discovered, consciously or unconsciously, that externalizing their thoughts helps them think more clearly. When thoughts stay internal, they can be vague and jumbled. But when you speak them out loud, you have to organize them into coherent sentences, and that organization clarifies your thinking. This is why writers often read their work aloud, why programmers explain their code to rubber ducks, why therapists encourage clients to voice their feelings. Self-talk also serves an emotional regulation function. When you are overwhelmed, talking yourself through the situation out loud can be incredibly calming. It creates psychological distance from the emotion. Instead of being consumed by anxiety, you can say out loud what you are anxious about, why you are anxious, and what you can do about it. This transforms an overwhelming feeling into a problem that can be analyzed and addressed. You become both the person experiencing the emotion and the person helping yourself through it. What makes self-talk powerful is that it engages your social brain even when you are alone. When you talk to yourself, you are essentially taking both roles in a conversation. You are the speaker and the listener. This activates the same neural circuits that engage during social interaction, which means you get some of the benefits of talking to another person, even when no one else is there. For people who spend a lot of time alone, self-talk can be a crucial tool for maintaining mental health. People who talk to themselves usually are also more self-aware than average. They spend time examining their own thoughts, questioning their assumptions, and challenging their reasoning. This internal dialogue, especially when externalized through self-talk, creates a level of self-reflection that many people never achieve. They know themselves better because they regularly engage in conversation with themselves, exploring their motivations, values, fears, and desires. The social stigma around self-talk is unfortunate because it causes people to suppress a behavior that is actually beneficial. They feel embarrassed when caught talking to themselves. They worry people will think they are strange or mentally ill. But psychology shows that the opposite is true. The people who talk to themselves are often the ones with the most sophisticated internal lives, the most developed self-awareness, and the most effective cognitive strategies. Of course, there are different types of self-talk, and not all are equally beneficial. Positive self-talk, where you encourage and support yourself, has clear mental health benefits. Instructional self-talk, where you guide yourself through tasks, improves performance. Analytical self-talk, where you work through problems, enhances problem-solving. But negative self-talk, where you criticize and berate yourself, can be harmful. The key is becoming aware of your self-talk patterns and consciously shifting toward more constructive forms. People who talk to themselves usually have rich inner worlds that require external expression to be fully processed. Their thoughts are so complex, so layered, so intricate that they need to hear them spoken to fully understand them. This is not a weakness. This is a sophisticated cognitive strategy that helps them navigate mental complexity that would overwhelm someone who only thinks silently. Now we come to perhaps the most painful experience of having a quiet mind. If you feel trapped in thoughts, you are experiencing something that psychology calls rumination or cognitive entrapment. This is when your mind gets stuck in loops, cycling through the same thoughts repeatedly, unable to break free, unable to move forward. It is like being imprisoned inside your own head, and it is one of the most distressing psychological experiences possible. Feeling trapped in thoughts is different from normal thinking, or even overthinking. It is when your mind keeps returning to the same worry, the same memory, the same problem, no matter how many times you try to redirect it. You might spend hours or days stuck on a single interaction, replaying it endlessly, analyzing what you said, what they said, what you should have said. Or you might get trapped in an anxiety spiral, where each thought leads to a more frightening thought until you are convinced disaster is imminent. What makes this so painful is the loss of control. You know the thoughts are not helping. You know that replaying that conversation for the 100th time will not change what happened. You know that imagining worst-case scenarios is not productive. But knowing this does not help you stop. Your mind has hijacked your attention and will not let go. And that creates a feeling of helplessness that compounds the original distress. Psychology has identified several factors that contribute to getting trapped in thoughts. Anxiety disorders create a brain state where threat scanning becomes constant and inescapable. Depression can cause rumination about past failures and perceived inadequacies. Trauma can create intrusive thoughts that force themselves into awareness regardless of your will. Perfectionism drives repetitive analysis of decisions and interactions, searching for flaws. High emotional intensity of any kind can cause thoughts to become sticky, demanding attention long past their usefulness. If you feel trapped in thoughts, you probably also notice that certain triggers send you into these loops more readily. Maybe it is a particular person whose opinion matters too much to you. Maybe it is specific situations that activate your anxiety. Maybe it is certain times of day when your defenses are down. Identifying these triggers is important because it helps you understand that you are not randomly losing your mind. There are patterns, and patterns can be addressed. The experience of being trapped in thoughts often includes physical symptoms that make it worse. Your chest gets tight, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense up. You might pace or fidget, trying to physically escape the mental trap. You might lose appetite or stress eat, seeking any form of relief. Sleep becomes difficult because your thoughts invade that space too. The mental trap becomes a whole-body experience that is exhausting in every sense. What people who feel trapped in thoughts need to understand is that trying to stop thinking about something through sheer willpower usually backfires. This is the classic white bear problem from psychology. If I tell you not to think about a white bear, what is the first thing your mind does? It thinks about a white bear. The same happens with intrusive or obsessive thoughts. The more you fight them, the stronger they become. This is why people can spend hours telling themselves to stop thinking about something, only to find themselves thinking about it even more intensely. Breaking free from thought traps requires different strategies than willpower. Sometimes it means acknowledging the thoughts fully, rather than fighting them. You write them down in detail, externalizing them so they stop demanding internal attention. Sometimes it means physically interrupting the pattern through movement, cold water, or engaging your senses strongly. Sometimes it means medication to address the underlying anxiety or depression that fuels the rumination. Sometimes it means therapy to process the unresolved issues that keep surfacing in your thoughts. If you feel trapped in thoughts, you are not weak or broken. You are experiencing a very real psychological phenomenon that many people face. Your mind is trying to protect you or solve a problem, but it is using a strategy that has become harmful. The thoughts keep looping because your brain thinks if it just analyzes enough, worries enough, replays enough, it will find the solution or prevent the feared outcome. But that is not how it works. Real solutions come from breaking the loop, not from running it endlessly. The path out of thought traps often involves learning to observe your thoughts without identifying with them. This is the core of mindfulness, recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind the thoughts. When a thought trap activates, instead of getting pulled into the content of the thoughts, you notice that you are having these thoughts. This creates a small gap between you and the thoughts, and in that gap, there is freedom. It is not easy. It takes practice. But it is possible to go from being trapped by thoughts to being the observer of thoughts, and that shift changes everything. Now let us talk about a choice that people with quiet minds often make. People who choose solitude are not necessarily antisocial or damaged or afraid of connection. Psychology shows that solitude seeking is often a sign of high self-awareness, strong self-sufficiency, and mature psychological development. These individuals have discovered that being alone is not loneliness. It is freedom. People who choose solitude are making a conscious decision that quality matters more than quantity in every aspect of life, including human connection. They would rather have one deep friendship than 50 shallow ones. They would rather spend an evening with their own thoughts than at a party full of meaningless small talk. They would rather develop their internal world than constantly engage with the external one. This is not avoidance. This is preference based on knowing themselves well. What psychology reveals is that people who genuinely choose solitude, as opposed to those forced into it by circumstances, score high on markers of emotional intelligence and self-actualization. They know who they are. They know what they need. They know what drains them and what fulfills them. And they have the courage to honor that knowledge, even when it goes against social expectations. This takes a level of self-trust that many people never develop. Choosing solitude becomes more common as people mature psychologically. When you are young, you often seek external validation and social belonging above all else. But as you develop a secure sense of self, as you learn who you really are beneath the conditioning and expectations, you often find that solitude becomes increasingly appealing. Not because you hate people, but because you have found something more valuable than social approval. You have found yourself. People who choose solitude are often highly creative. Creativity requires space, both physical and mental. It requires freedom from the demands and judgments of others. It requires time to explore ideas without interruption, to follow thoughts wherever they lead, to create without an audience. Solitude provides this space in a way that constant social engagement never can. Many of history's greatest artists, writers, thinkers, and innovators were people who chose solitude regularly, because that is where their best work emerged. There is also a spiritual dimension to choosing solitude for many people. Solitude creates space for reflection, for connecting with something larger than yourself, for hearing the quiet voice of intuition that gets drowned out by social noise. Whether you call it God, universe, higher self, or simply your own deep wisdom, that connection often requires silence and solitude to access. People who choose solitude are often on a journey of self-discovery or spiritual development that requires time alone. What makes solitude different from loneliness is the quality of the experience. Loneliness is painful. It is a longing for connection that is not being met. But solitude is peaceful. It is the joy of your own company, the satisfaction of not needing anyone else to feel complete. People who choose solitude have learned to be their own best friend, their own companion, their own source of entertainment and comfort. This is not sad. This is liberation. Society often pities people who spend a lot of time alone, assuming they must be lonely or unable to connect with others. But people who choose solitude are usually perfectly capable of connection. They simply choose not to engage in it constantly because they recognize its costs as well as its benefits. They understand that every social interaction requires energy, and they are selective about where that energy goes. They invest in connections that truly matter and decline those that do not. People who choose solitude also tend to have deeper relationships when they do connect with others. Because they are comfortable alone, they are not desperate for any connection they can get. They do not tolerate toxic relationships out of fear of being alone. They do not settle for friendships that feel one-sided or draining. They wait for quality, and when they find it, they invest deeply. Their friendships may be fewer, but they are richer and more authentic than the numerous shallow connections many people maintain. Finally, let us talk about a transformation that happens to many people with quiet minds. If you are becoming quieter, it is because you are undergoing a profound psychological shift. This quieting is not about losing your voice. It is about gaining discernment. It is about learning what deserves your words and what does not. It is about understanding that silence can be more powerful than speech. People become quieter for many reasons, and psychology has mapped several common pathways. Some become quieter after experiencing betrayal or having their words used against them. They learn that not everyone deserves access to their thoughts, and they become more selective about what they share and with whom. This is not bitterness. This is wisdom born from experience. Others become quieter as they develop deeper self-awareness. They realize that much of what they used to say was performative, designed to get validation or fill uncomfortable silences. As they become more secure in themselves, the need to perform decreases. They stop talking to prove they are smart, interesting, or worthy. They speak only when they have something genuine to contribute, and they are comfortable with silence the rest of the time. If you are becoming quieter, it might also be because you are processing something too deep for words. You are in a period of transformation, of questioning, of becoming someone new. During these times, external communication often decreases because all your energy is focused inward. You are not being rude or distant. You are doing the internal work that requires your full attention, and words would only distract from that process. Becoming quieter can also be a response to feeling unheard. If you have repeatedly tried to communicate your thoughts, feelings, or needs, and been dismissed or misunderstood, eventually you stop trying. Your silence is not acceptance. It is the end of hope that you will be understood by people who are not capable of hearing you. This silence protects you from the pain of continued dismissal, even though it also increases your isolation. Psychology shows that becoming quieter is often part of a maturation process. Young people tend to be loud, seeking attention and validation through constant expression. But as we age and develop psychologically, many of us become more internal, more reflective, more selective about when and how we use our voices. This is not decline. This is evolution. We are learning to find value in silence, to trust that we do not need to constantly announce our existence to justify it. If you are becoming quieter, you might notice that your relationships are changing. Some people become uncomfortable with your silence. They pressure you to talk more, to share more, to be more like you used to be. But others appreciate the depth that your quiet brings. They recognize that when you do speak, your words carry weight. They value quality over quantity. These are the people worth keeping as you continue to evolve. The transformation into greater quietness often brings gifts that loud people never access. You hear more because you are not constantly talking. You observe more because you are not constantly performing. You understand more because you are not constantly reacting. Your quietness creates space for depth of perception and understanding that constant noise makes impossible. This is not losing anything. This is gaining everything that matters. Becoming quieter also means you are learning the power of strategic silence. You are discovering that sometimes not responding is the most powerful response, that sometimes letting others fill the silence reveals more than any question you could ask, that sometimes holding your peace is more dignified than defending yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. This is sophisticated emotional intelligence that most people never develop. What ties all these aspects of quiet minds together is that they represent a way of being in the world that is fundamentally different from the mainstream. Whether you think too deeply, have a mind that never stops, talk to yourself, feel trapped in thoughts, choose solitude, or are becoming quieter, you are part of a group of people whose internal lives are rich, complex, and often overwhelming in their intensity. The world is not built for quiet minds. It is built for people who can skim the surface, who can move quickly without reflection, who can engage constantly without exhaustion. But quiet minds cannot and will not operate that way. And that is not a problem to be fixed. That is a difference to be honored. The depth, the awareness, the complexity that quiet minds bring to the world is valuable beyond measure, even when it feels like a burden to carry. If you have a quiet mind, you need to know that you are not alone. There are millions of others who understand exactly what it feels like to have thoughts that never stop, to see layers that others miss, to feel too much and think too deeply. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are simply wired for depth in a world that often rewards shallowness. And that depth, painful as it can be, is also your gift. It allows you to create meaning, to understand complexity, to see truth, to connect authentically, to live consciously in ways that most people never will. The challenge is learning to live well with a quiet mind. This means accepting that you will never be someone who just goes with the flow effortlessly. It means finding strategies that work for your particular type of mind. It means surrounding yourself with people who appreciate depth rather than demanding you become more shallow. It means creating space in your life for the internal processing that your mind requires. It means being patient with yourself when your thoughts overwhelm you, when you cannot sleep, when you need more alone time than others understand. Living well with a quiet mind also means recognizing when you need help. If your thoughts are truly tormenting you, if your mind has become a prison rather than a gift, professional support can make an enormous difference. Therapy can help you develop better relationships with your thoughts. Medication can sometimes provide relief when the volume of mental activity becomes unmanageable. Support groups can connect you with others who understand. There is no shame in needing help to manage a mind that operates at such intensity. Ultimately, having a quiet mind in the way we have discussed here, loud with thoughts, rich with complexity, heavy with awareness, is both blessing and burden. It gives you access to depths of understanding and experience that create meaning and beauty and insight. But it also creates exhaustion, isolation, and sometimes genuine suffering. The goal is not to change who you are. The goal is to learn to work with your mind rather than against it, to honor its gifts while managing its challenges, to find peace not despite your quiet mind, but because of understanding it fully. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that experiences those thoughts. And in that distinction lies the key to living freely with a mind that never stops being beautifully, exhaustingly, gloriously complex. Let us go deeper into understanding what makes quiet minds so unique and why they experience the world so differently. There is a neurological component that science is only beginning to fully understand. Brain imaging studies show that people with highly active minds have different patterns of neural connectivity, particularly in areas related to self-reflection, problem-solving, and emotional processing. Their brains are literally wired for complexity. This neural difference means that quiet minds process more information simultaneously than average minds. While most people can focus on one task or thought at a time, people with quiet minds are often running multiple cognitive processes in parallel. They are thinking about the task at hand while also noticing patterns, making connections to previous experiences, anticipating future implications, and monitoring their emotional responses. This parallel processing is incredibly powerful, but also incredibly exhausting. What this means in practical terms is that everyday experiences are more intense for people with quiet minds. A simple conversation is not just about the words being spoken. It is about reading body language, interpreting tone, considering subtext, analyzing dynamics, and processing all of this simultaneously. A decision about what to eat for dinner is not just about preference. It is about nutritional implications, budget considerations, time management, and how this choice fits into larger patterns. Nothing is ever simple because their minds will not let it be simple. This intensity extends to emotional experiences as well. People with quiet minds do not just feel emotions. They analyze them, question them, try to understand their origins and implications. When they are sad, they are also wondering why they are sad, whether they should be sad, what the sadness means about them or their life. This metacognitive awareness of emotions can be helpful for self-understanding, but it can also prevent them from simply experiencing feelings without intellectualizing them. The challenge of living with a quiet mind is that the world expects you to operate at a pace that does not match your internal processing speed. Society rewards quick decisions, fast responses, immediate action. But quiet minds need time to process, to analyze, to fully understand before committing. This mismatch creates constant friction. They are labeled as indecisive when they are actually being thorough. They are seen as slow when they are actually being careful. They are criticized for overthinking when they are simply thinking at the depth their minds naturally operate. People with quiet minds also tend to have exceptional memory for details, especially emotional details. They remember not just what happened but how it felt, what it meant, how it connected to other experiences. This rich memory can be a gift, allowing them to learn from experience and recognize patterns others miss. But it can also be a curse when painful memories remain vivid and intrusive, when embarrassing moments from years ago still feel fresh, when they cannot forget slights or hurts that others have long since moved past. The constant mental activity of quiet minds also affects their experience of time. While others move through their days in a relatively linear fashion, people with quiet minds are often simultaneously in the past, present, and future. They are processing what happened before, engaging with what is happening now, and anticipating what might happen next, all at the same time. This creates a fragmented experience of time that can make it hard to be fully present in any single moment. Sleep is particularly challenging for people with quiet minds. The transition from wakefulness to sleep requires the mind to quiet down, to let go of active processing. But for someone whose mind never stops, this transition can be nearly impossible without help. They lie in bed and their mind immediately starts reviewing the day, planning tomorrow, worrying about problems, generating ideas, replaying conversations. Hours can pass before exhaustion finally forces them into sleep, and even then, their dreams are often intense and complex, preventing true rest. This sleep deprivation compounds all the other challenges of having a quiet mind. When you are chronically tired, your cognitive filters weaken. Thoughts that you could normally manage become overwhelming. Emotions that you could usually regulate become uncontrollable. The mental noise that you have learned to live with becomes unbearable. Sleep deprivation for someone with an already overactive mind creates a vicious cycle that is incredibly difficult to break. What people with quiet minds need to understand is that they are not failing at being human. They are succeeding at being a different kind of human. Evolution has always benefited from diversity, and quiet minds represent a valuable variation. While some people are built for quick action and surface engagement, others are built for deep analysis and strategic thinking. Both are necessary. Both have value. The problem is that modern society has decided that one type is normal and the other is problematic. But that is a cultural judgment, not a truth. Throughout history, people with quiet minds have been the philosophers, the artists, the scientists, the inventors, the strategists. They have been the ones who saw what others missed, who questioned what others accepted, who created what others thought impossible. Their ability to think deeply, to process complexity, to sit with difficult questions, has driven human progress in countless ways. The discomfort they feel in their own minds is often the friction that generates insight and innovation. But we need to be honest about the cost. Living with a quiet mind is hard. It is lonely. It is exhausting. It often feels like a punishment rather than a gift. And for some people, the burden becomes too heavy. Depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges are more common among people with highly active minds, not because they are weak, but because they are carrying more weight than the human psyche was designed to carry without support. This is why community matters so much for people with quiet minds. Finding even one other person who understands, who thinks at your depth, who does not pressure you to be different, can be life-changing. These connections are rare because quiet minds are relatively uncommon, and even when they find each other, they often struggle with the vulnerability required to truly connect. But when it happens, when you find someone who gets it, the relief is profound. You are no longer alone in your complexity. For people with quiet minds who are struggling, I want to be very clear about something. Your mind is not your enemy. It feels that way sometimes, I know. It feels like your thoughts are torturing you, like your brain is working against you, like you would be better off without this constant mental activity. But your mind is trying to help you. It is trying to protect you, understand you, prepare you. It is just using strategies that have become maladaptive, and those strategies can be changed. Changing your relationship with your mind does not mean stopping your thoughts. That is not possible, and trying to force it only creates more suffering. Instead, it means learning to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. It means recognizing that you can have anxious thoughts without being an anxious person. You can have sad thoughts without being defined by sadness. You can have complex thoughts without being obligated to resolve all of them. Your thoughts are just thoughts. They are not commands. They are not facts. They are not your identity. This shift from being controlled by thoughts to observing them is what meditation practices aim to develop. But for people with quiet minds, traditional meditation can be incredibly frustrating because their minds do not naturally quiet down. They sit to meditate and immediately have thoughts about whether they are doing it right, thoughts about how many thoughts they are having, thoughts about why they cannot stop thinking. This is not failure. This is just how their minds work. The practice is not about stopping thoughts, but about noticing them without judgment and gently returning attention to the present moment again and again and again. For some people with quiet minds, medication can be helpful in turning down the volume of mental activity to a manageable level. There is no shame in this. If your mind is operating at an intensity that prevents you from functioning or enjoying life, medication that helps regulate that intensity is no different than wearing glasses to correct vision. It is a tool that helps you operate more effectively in a world that was not designed for how you are naturally built. Therapy, particularly certain types like cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, can also be transformative for people with quiet minds. These approaches teach you how to work with your thoughts rather than against them, how to identify cognitive distortions, how to choose which thoughts deserve attention and which can be acknowledged and released. A skilled therapist who understands the unique challenges of highly active minds can provide strategies that make a real difference. But beyond professional help, there are practices that people with quiet minds can develop on their own. Journaling externalizes thoughts, getting them out of your head and onto paper where they can be examined more objectively. Physical exercise forces your mind to focus on your body, providing temporary relief from mental activity. Creative pursuits channel mental energy into something productive and meaningful. Structured routines reduce the number of decisions your mind has to process each day, conserving cognitive energy for what truly matters. Learning to set boundaries with your own mind is also crucial. This might sound strange, but you can tell your mind that now is not the time to worry about that problem, to analyze that situation, to replay that conversation. You can schedule worry time, a specific period each day where you allow yourself to think about everything that is bothering you, and outside that time, you gently redirect your attention when worries arise. This gives your mind the processing time it needs while preventing it from hijacking your entire day. People with quiet minds also need to accept that they will probably never be spontaneous in the way that others are. Their need for processing time, for understanding all the implications and possibilities, means that quick decisions will always feel uncomfortable. This is not a flaw. This is a feature of how their minds work. The key is to structure your life in ways that honor this need, rather than constantly fighting it. Give yourself time to make decisions. Choose work that allows for thoughtful analysis, rather than constant reaction. Surround yourself with people who understand that your careful consideration is not hesitation but thoroughness. As people with quiet minds age, many report that things get better, not because their minds become less active, but because they become more skilled at managing the activity. They learn what triggers to avoid, what practices help, what people and environments support versus drain them. They develop self-compassion, recognizing that having a complex mind is challenging and they deserve kindness rather than self-criticism. They find meaning in their depth, recognizing that their ability to see and understand complexity is valuable even when it is uncomfortable. The journey of living with a quiet mind is ultimately about integration. It is about accepting that this is how your mind works, while also refusing to be imprisoned by it. It is about honoring your depth, while also finding moments of lightness. It is about using your gifts of perception and analysis, while also protecting yourself from overwhelm. It is about being both the thinker who goes deep and the observer who can step back. This integration does not happen quickly or easily, but it is possible, and it leads to a life that is rich with meaning even when it is heavy with complexity. If you have made it this far in understanding quiet minds, whether because you have one yourself or because you love someone who does, thank you for taking the time to truly see this experience. Quiet minds are often invisible in their struggle because they are so good at appearing functional, while internally drowning in thoughts. They need to be seen, understood, and supported in ways that honor their difference rather than pathologizing it. The world needs quiet minds. It needs people who think deeply, who see complexity, who question assumptions, who process carefully. But quiet minds also need the world to make space for them, to slow down enough for their thoroughness, to value depth as much as speed, to recognize that different does not mean deficient. Until that happens, people with quiet minds will continue to feel like they are living in a world that was not built for them. Because they are. But that does not mean they do not belong here. It means the world needs to expand its definition of normal to include the beautiful, exhausting, invaluable complexity that quiet minds bring to human experience.